So please, 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 men, if you're listening, get the work done. The work that has to do with your mental capacity, whatever it is, those issues that you keep hitting against the road when you think about your childhood traumas, childhood experiences that have kept you locked out. Is it about neglect that you felt growing up? Is it the desire to be validated? Is it the desire to always feel like you need to separate yourself? The self-destructive nature that you saw when you were growing up? If it's any of those, please don't ignore that. Because if you don't deal with it now, you will simply keep on hitting against it like a brick rock. And not just that, you end up taking into the next generation, and you will become the very thing that you feared the most because you haven't taken time to deal with it. So do the work that needs to be done. Do the work. Don't ignore the work. Do the work that needs to be done. Because at the end of the day, it's not just for you. Hello and welcome to Journey to Fatherhood. I want to say thank you so much for joining. My name is Chinedu. I'm the host of the podcast. And I just want to begin by saying a big, huge thank you to you all. It's been a year since we started Journey to Fatherhood podcast, April the 4th, 2020. And it was amazing when I was thinking about it in the last few days. I've just been thinking about it in the last few days, and it made me realize why I really started. If you remember the first ever episode of Journey to Fatherhood, it was why fatherhood. And of course, if you haven't watched it, please make sure you get a load of that, because that will give you a bit more of a deeper insight as to why I started a podcast, what it intends to address. And it's just been very, very humbling for me. It's been a wonderful experience for me in everything. I've had the chance to meet so many amazing people, talk about things and start working on things on myself. We started with just talking about, okay, how do you approach the idea of fatherhood? What is fatherhood? And so many people and so many guests have had different ideas. Again, if you have, I would love to hear your definition. No Google copy and paste. If you have a definition that you want to share with us, please, please, please do leave that in the comment section, whether you're watching via video or listening via podcast. And make sure you leave a review. It's so important, and I really, really appreciate all your support. Once again, it's our year anniversary, and I really want this to be heard across the world. I want more people to start dealing with this, especially men. I want more men to start addressing that. And on that note, I really want to start by just saying thank you to every single one of the guests that we've had from the very beginning, from the ever first podcast guest, my great friend Billy. And then we went from numerous different people. I can't really name all the names, but I just want to say thank you, because you've made this podcast a wonderful platform to listen on and to learn on. So now today, I really want to go back to the very beginning, the very question that started all of this. And if you remember correctly, the question I said in the very first episode was, why wait to become a father before learning how to become a great father? Now, this was the very nucleus in which we started this podcast. This was the reason I was so frustrated with the so much content. A lot of content we found out there was, or the ones that I found were people that were already fathers, now giving their words of advice for young people when they're growing up, or giving their advice to fellow fathers in their fatherhood stage. And I felt that it would be nice to really have an opportunity to work, go on a journey with someone as they aspire for that fatherhood, but learn how we can, as men, deal with so many underlying issues that affect us as men and as fathers. So we went through breaking down those toxic masculine ideas and just reframing what manhood was, what fatherhood meant. We've had people from all over the world, people from America, people from the UK, people from Nigeria. So many people have been able to chime in with their personal experience, different backgrounds, different stories. And so it's been an amazing ride for me. And I just want to tell you this: celebrate every step. Now, I shared a post, I believe, on social media, on my social media page, Instagram page. And the quote was, I was just thinking about it, it came upon me, and I wrote down, Celebrate every step, not just the milestones, because it's all part of the journey. I'll say that again. Celebrate every step, not just the milestones, because it's all part of the journey. Now, why do I say this? The reason I say this is because, in all honesty, if I'm going to be transparent with you, leading up to the 1 year anniversary, I knew I was counting down. I knew from as early as February, I was looking forward to it from February. So I've been looking forward to it for a long time. However, if I could be honest, there were areas of myself where I felt, but have I really done enough? Have I really achieved all the things I want? Is there something to boast about? Is there really something to be proud about in a 1 year duration of the podcast? And for a long time, I battled and battled with this. I battled and battled with this, internally battling with it. But do you know why it's so important to celebrate the steps? Because a lot of the times when we don't celebrate the steps, we don't even give ourselves enough props to go for the big milestones. Now, this links exactly with the idea, the journey to fatherhood, the journey through manhood. Because what I found is that a lot of I used to find myself doing not delayed gratification, but delayed happiness where I used to often in the false idea or false notion of discipline tell myself, well, I don't deserve to be happy right now. I don't really deserve to clap now. When I achieve this, then I'll clap. When I achieve this, then I'll be happy. When I achieve this, then I'll know I deserve to be proud of myself. Now, if you take this very back, I don't know what about your childhood experience was, but growing up, a lot of the times where small achievements weren't really praised. The little achievements, the ones that we're seeing as insignificant or not as big as the big milestones. For example, being even able to do the slightest things. Now, it could be different examples for you, but I remember one thing was for sure. When I was growing up, thanks to my mother helping me and being there for me when I was growing up, one thing I always craved from my father was well done. Even if it was well done for cleaning up or well done for tidying up or well done for something, I always craved that. And I always tie it back to why we need to ensure that we congratulate ourselves in the small steps. Because a lot of times as we grow up, we imitate or we replicate what we saw when we're growing up. So if you were growing up with a father that didn't really show you that affection or that those times of elevation where they applauded you for the little achievements you were achieving, it's so easy to then ignore every step you make as an adult. Take, for example, maybe you didn't quite get the grades, but you got a better grade than you did last time. Little things like that weren't really celebrated. And if it wasn't celebrated for you, it often puts you in a place where you don't quite celebrate the little achievements that you're getting. Because the truth about it, sometimes, even when we call it little achievements, there are still achievements. It's still achievements in the word. Little achievements is still there. Little win is still there. So I say this because a lot of the time is deep rooted from our personal experience, the traumas we faced. That is why I say it's so important to take some time away and lay all these things, the insecurities you have, the feelings of neglect, the desire for validation, lay all of that on the table. Because sometimes, if you're not careful, you will simply carry this into relationships and relationships with your own future kids and wife and family. Now, I've been on this journey and I've been becoming more self-aware of myself. I've been more self-aware of myself. I've been becoming more self-aware about my behavior, my thought patterns. And one of the things I realized recently, and I'm working on it, getting the right help for it. One thing I'm definitely dealing with is learning to love and appreciate myself. Now, I know this encompasses so much more in terms of from a lot of the things we've talked about and we've covered all through the stages. But if you remember the real reason, if I tell you again why we started this, the podcast was from that same question I said, why wait to become a father before you learn how to be a great father? Now, that is still the question. However, I know that we've started to expand beyond just fatherhood, manhood, the journey, relationships, emotional intelligence, and so much more. But when you really take it back to it, a father can only father the way he's learnt or the way he experienced. So it's two of those things. Either the way you learnt, someone taught you when you're of age, or what you experienced. However, what tends to happen is that when people don't actually seek out knowledge on how to learn to be better fathers or better versions of themselves, better men, they end up simply replicating the very things that we're trying to run away from. And sometimes they don't know. The reason why I wanted to focus on this and talk about the importance of getting the work done is because a lot of times, like, you can listen to this podcast and you could end up saying, okay, you could be pumped or you could feel down and you could be reflective, but it's not just about the moods that you go through. It's about the work that you do. It's about the work that you go through after you listen to this, because that is so crucial. Now, let's take a list of them. The avoidance mentality, the fear of being hurt, the fear of being of not getting love back. Now, I had to deal with that for a long time, where if I felt that, okay, maybe I'm not so sure if they are is interested in me, whether business partners, work colleagues, or even social relationships. Because when we don't deal with that, we end up over complicating life for ourselves. Now, one thing that really hit me a lot was when I was seeking validation in other people, seeking validation in terms of my worth was going up and down like on a pendulum, where it was almost like, do they feel the same way? If not, I'll retract. If they do, I'll get close. But one thing I had to come to terms was that I can't take this into something till I start dealing with it. What I mean by that is that a lot of times as men, because we don't deal with these things, we close our one eye to it, but in the back of our mind, we're still thinking about it. And what tends to happen is that we go into serious romantic relationships. And because everyone's trying to play the part where they are trying to be the superior or they're trying to cover shells and not let their guard down, things can really escalate. And if it's not dealt properly, and if you don't have time to deal with it or work through those problems, you simply take those problems into a family. Now, I'm not a father. However, I've noticed what my father went through. It was only up until recent in the last few years that I started discovering that my father came from the same family like I did. There was little to no relationship with him and his father. Now, it's not an excuse for people to repeat the same things, but it's a caution and a reason for people to sit down and do the work through their mind, do the work through their idea and the way they approach things, the way they approach life. Because the desire for validation is not just in terms of the way you relate with someone. A lot of times it's then you allowing other things to define your value, your work, your job, your wealth, your status, your fame, and things like that. And then when those go, you become little to nothing in terms of how you view yourself. However, how many times have we seen that where people, a lot of men, unfortunately, because they don't do the work, want something that they value so much, want something that gives them so much value or so much validation or worth. Once that's taken away, you see them just manifesting things that they are even shocked that they had. You see them start becoming abusive, start becoming violent, start becoming unlike themselves because the foundation isn't quite there. The foundation isn't quite there. And even taking it back before you even taking it back to people that aren't even married, even if it's not in a family, but you got to think to yourself, okay, this desire to be loved by other people, of course, is a natural desire. But why is it that I'm seeking validation? Because the issue of validation has resurfaced itself in so many ways. And that's one thing I'm working through. And that's something you need to take your time and ask yourself, okay, what I'm doing, who I'm with, who I'm talking to, what I think of myself, where is that based from? What is that based on? Is that within or is that externally? Because we've had so many guests that come on the show, and one thing they always tend to say the same way, in a way that they had to take time to start working on themselves. It's not just about being aware of, okay, yes, I'm a bit avoidant, or I seek validation, or maybe I'm highly anxious, I have high anxiety. It's not just about knowing those things. It's about taking action. And a lot of the time, I know that one thing I've come to realize is with a lot of men, conversations I've had off the podcast, it's more so, well, I don't have the time for that now. Or maybe I'll get professional help for that later in life when I've sorted this out, when I've got my money right, when I got my job right, when I'm in a relationship, and all of those things. And sometimes it's often too late. Not that it's irreversible, but sometimes when you think about it, if you were driving a car and you knew the battery was bad, but you were just hoping, okay, don't worry, let me try and get to my final destination, then I can forget about them. Hopefully by then I wouldn't need to worry about the battery. Because that's exactly how some of us react to these things. When we have noted down and we are becoming more aware of areas that we need to work on in our personal life, we tend to put on the back burner and carry it almost on the side and say to ourselves, well, I'll just manage for now. I'll manage. Hopefully, but maybe if I get married, I won't have to think about this. Maybe when I have kids, I won't have to think about it. But you're still carrying that on the side. Because what tends to happen with that analogy of the car, if you have a battery that is faulty, you may very well find yourself ending up getting stuck in a road if you don't take time and sit in the car and call the right help. It could be AA, the emergency response team, or whatever it is, seeking the right help. And sometimes, yes, maybe it could really just be you sitting down and coming to accept and apply change, acceptance and change. We have a guest speaker coming next week that is going to be phenomenal. I think he's going to blow your socks off because he's coming from a very psychological, very objective way. And he's worked in DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. But I'll hold that and you'll find out next week. However, one thing I really want us to be clear about is this. If you keep running away from doing the work because you don't want the feelings that will resurface, you will eventually have to face it. It's either you choose to do the work or the consequences force you to do the work. It's either you choose to do the work that needs to be done in your life or the consequences of not doing the work will force you to do the work. So please, man, I know that sometimes it's one of those areas. Maybe you don't know how to express yourself. Maybe you don't even know where to start or how to even hold it in because every single time you think about those childhood memories or those experiences as a teenager, relationship with father, relationship with parents, just life experiences, you're still bottling it in and you know it's heavy, but you keep hoping that you have more strength to carry the weight. Why not unload, unpack, clear it out, and clear out the rubbish? Granted, it's not a one night thing, but the earlier you start dealing with these things, the earlier you start doing the work, the more stronger you will be. The more self aware you'll become because then you're able to pick up on those little things, those little habits that you know are wrong, those little 10 ways of thinking that you know are destructing your view of life. Self-awareness is great, but taking the action, that's where it's at. Because you need to do the work. Trust me, there may be things that after this podcast, after listening to this and watching this, there may be things that will come to your mind and you'll be saying to yourself, wow, if I start dealing with this, I'm going to get all emotional. I'm going to start crying and whatnot. But we talked about this. It's absolutely okay to cry. It's absolutely okay not to be okay sometimes, because when you sit down and you truly are honest with yourself, your upbringing, and sometimes it could just be your behavior, your impulsive behavior. Sit down and challenge yourself. Where is this really coming from? What is the root of this? And trust me, sometimes you may very well need to outsource to get professional help. There is no shame in seeking help. There is no shame in feeling vulnerable. There is no shame in wanting to do the work. Because if we could apply the same energy we have when it comes to trying to do the work in terms of being financially stable, doing this and that and that and that, if you could apply that same intensity on doing the work on yourself, just imagine how far you would go. And what's crazy is that a lot of people know this, but they still don't do this. So one thing I would really encourage you as we celebrate the 1 year, I want you to think back. If you need to refresh your mind, please go back to the first episode, Why Fatherhood. But the reason I'm saying all of this is to remind you that it's important to do the work. Because if you don't do the work, oh boy, it will keep coming up. It will keep coming up like a broken engine that every single time you take a step, all of a sudden you don't even know what's happening and you find yourself down. So do the work and keep doing the work. I really wanted to again reiterate how truly, truly, truly grateful I am to all of you. Whether you've watched or you've listened or you shared or you've liked or you've left a review, whatever and anyhow you've been able to support the Journey to Fatherhood podcast, I truly, truly appreciate it. It means the world to me, and we have some more things we want to do. Please, 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 I encourage you. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. If you want it to be anonymous, please write to us at thejourneytofatherhood@gmail.com. Please write to us on thejourneytofatherhood@gmail.com. Alternatively, please connect to us on our social media platforms, be it Facebook, which is Journey to Fatherhood Podcast, or Instagram, which is Journey to Fatherhood, or Twitter, which is J2 Fatherhood, J the number 2 Fatherhood. There are so many discussions and so many areas we can explore. But you need to start doing the work. You need to start doing the work. If it's not even for you, then how much value are you putting on your own growth? Don't do it because I said so. Do it because you know so. It's important to do the work, because the more you put it off, the heavier it will be when it resurfaces. The heavier it will be when you're faced with nothing but the consequences of you not doing the work. And on a lighter note, happy birthday. Yes, I said happy birthday because you're part of the Journey to Fatherhood podcast family. The Journey to Fatherhood family, thank you so, so much. Once again, I cannot thank you enough, because there have been tough times through the journey, but we're sticking to it because we have a destination. And every single one of you, because of your likes, because of your share, because of your recommendations to people, and you listening and tuning in, that's why this journey is being even sweeter than it was when it started. So I appreciate all of you. And I truly, 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 truly appreciate you. So please make sure you're back here next week. Episodes go live, episodes are published video and audio format, 5 a.m. every morning GMT, 5 a.m. GMT, London time. That's when you see the episodes live. Please, please, please make sure you like, leave a review, send us questions, because I genuinely want us to thrive in this journey together. So it's Chinedum here, saying thank you for joining Journey to Fatherhood, and I'll see you next week. Take care.